Okay, there you go. All right, sorry about that. So still trying to gain some Zoom proficiency here. So, well, welcome everybody. It's really exciting to welcome you to this first professional development presentation for our Johns Hopkins JHAD-RCMAR, and we're very excited to have Dr. Marcela Blinka as our first presenter in this series. We're going to be having this series the second Friday of every month at this time. This month, of course, it falls in the third Friday, but we're really looking forward to this series, and we really appreciate you attending today, and particularly Dr. Blinka for agreeing to present. Dr. Blinka, I'm sure many of you know her already, but she is recently joined the analytic core of the JHAD-RCMAR and as a qualitative methodologist and research specialist, and working with the co-directors for that core, Chin Lee and Jeannie Lasalkos. And Dr. Blinka is a senior research program coordinator for in the Center on Aging and Health, having joined the center about 2 years ago. And prior to that, she worked with the Geographic Management of Cancer Health Disparities Program at the Sidney Kimmel Comprehensive Cancer Center at Johns Hopkins, where she served as a Regional Coordinating Director for Region 1 North. She received her MSW and PhD degrees from the National Catholic School of Social Service in Washington, D.C., and really has a very interesting background, a lot of experience with qualitative research methods, has co-authored several recent articles with David Roth and other members of the Johns Hopkins Center on Aging and Health on family caregiving and well-being and caregiving transitions within families. She's also has several studies ongoing with qualitative approaches, including one that she presented at the GSA meetings last year that involves an application for in-home frailty assessment, qualitative study using sensor-based mobile applications. So I'd also like to mention that in 2019, Dr. Blinka received the Mason F. Lord Award of Excellence in Leadership. And we are very fortunate to have her here with us today. And Dr. Blinka, thanks again for coming. And I think you've got your slides already up, and we should get started then. And should be plenty of time for questions and answers afterwards. We go to 2 o'clock today.
Okay, thank you, George.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here today. You know, it is exciting to be here, and you know, and a little bit intimidating seeing seeing Joe Gallo being one of the participants that is such an expert in qualitative research. So this is really just going to be an overview of qualitative research design and analysis, and you know, oh, let me see. I don't have, there's nothing to disclose. And this is what what I'm hoping to get through today to present with you. You know, what are the reasons for conducting qualitative research? The different approaches that are most found in the literature, and the most common.
Marcela,
yeah?
sorry, can you do the show mode? This is a presenter mode.
Oh, okay. So do I go here and then, is that better?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know, I'm going to be talking about the most common use methods. Also, we will touch on data analysis and ethical issues involved with conducted qualitative research. some strategies for rigor, you know, and my favorite tips for doing it and things to think about. So why conduct qualitative research? You know, qualitative research really involves asking participants about their experiences of things that are, you know, that are of interest to you. You get to hear about their lives. You know, you will gain insights into specific things that, that, you know, that are of interest to you, but that are very intimate to that participant. And you try to see the world that somebody else's experiences through their eyes. It helps us understand complex problems and situations, and it also gives us multiple perspectives, you know, from different people. You know, it also tells us how people do things, you know, how it is that they go from point A to point B, and what are the things that they do and what they skip, what are the steps that they skip, and what are the things that, you know, how they do it. We also, you know, we like to hear people, we listen to them, how they describe things, how they see things. And we also focus on a specific phenomenon. So it gives us the opportunity to look at just one problem at a time. And sometimes that's difficult to do with quantitative research. It also helps us go deeper into what it is about that specific problem. And one of the things that is really important, that is dear to me in qualitative research, is that it allows you to explore topics that are emotionally charged. You know, something that someone in a survey may not be able to give you all the detail, you know, that will be needed for you to really reach a conclusion about that or to get closer to the truth. So here are approaches to qualitative research. And this is a table that it's not an exact copy of Creswell's table, but you know, I abstracted many of the elements from that table here. So most of the qualitative researchers will tell you that they do narrative, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, and case study. I think that most of us are doing case study research. But just briefly, you know, I'm gonna tell you about these different approaches to qualitative research. They all have a slight different focus, and they all, you know, the unit of analysis is slightly different. The data collection sometimes are very similar, but the way that you use them, it's slightly different. So take, for instance, narrative analysis. You know, when you're exploring the life of one or more individuals, and you're going to be using interviews, and you're also going to be looking, and for some reason this is that, and you're going to use documents. You know, they're going to help tell a story and put a picture together for that study. Phenomenology is your understanding the essence of the experience that several individuals are going to share with you. You know, grounded theory is labor intensive. And, you know, Creswell says that you will be doing 20 to 60 interviews to develop a grounded theory. When I have read about grounded theory analysis, it takes people years to develop that. And they're collecting data from more than 60 people in order to develop that grounded theory. I don't know if you're familiar with Brené Brown, and you know, she spent 6 years, you know, to develop her theory. Ethnography, it's describing and interpreting a culture sharing group. If you think of Margaret Mead and how she embedded herself in the culture and studied, you know, Samoans, and I can't remember all the other groups that she studied, but that it's, I don't see any of us doing that here. And like I said, case study, oh, there we go. You know, we're developing an in-depth description and analysis of multiple cases. And it's an event, a program, or an activity, or more than one individual will be our unit of analysis. Most of us, like I said earlier, are doing case study, and we use interviews. We obviously also observe our participants, but I don't know if many of us are using documents and artifacts to, as part of that study. The most common research methods in qualitative research are in-depth interviews. In in-depth interviews, you are, there are several steps that you need to be able to do that. It's not just sitting and chatting with someone. I once heard someone say, well, you're just asking questions. Well, it's more than that. There is a great deal of preparation that goes into being able to come up with an interview guide and refine it. Participant observation is something that we do less, but it's another research methodology that is used often, perhaps mostly marketing. And then focus groups. One of the things is that you can use any one of these individually, or you can use all of these three approaches in a single study. You can have a focus group to develop your research questions. Then you can do your in-depth interviews. And also, if let's say you're studying older adults in a memory clinic that come for an evaluation, and you can observe them to see how, how they behave while they're, or, what they're doing while they're waiting for their provider to come and take them back to the exam room. So in an in-depth interview, the questions are designed to elicit information, and this information should be something that is directly related to your, to what it is that you want to study. Questions should not be probing. Questions should be respectful of the individual. And, there are many times when we're interviewing that we really want to hear more about them, but, I just beg you to just don't do that. I mean, it's not appropriate. In-depth interviews are time-consuming and resource-intensive. If you think about it, I think the shortest interview I've ever had have been about 30 minutes. And, it can be as long as 90 minutes or more. You're going to be collecting data on individuals' personal stories, their perspective, their experiences. They're going to be sharing so much with you. And this is going to generate a great deal of data. So just think about how labor intensive that will be for you to go through all of those transcripts afterward. An in-depth interview is particularly useful, with the sensitive topics that I mentioned earlier. And some example of that is, substance use, HIV status, other potentially embarrassing topics to participants. So participant observation, it's, you're going to be collecting the data on behaviors in their natural context. You can do it for a small group of people, that are naturally occurring. You're going to be looking in their environment. And then you're going to be uncovering sensitive issues about that culture. And you're going to be talking, and this is also labor intensive and time consuming. You are going to try to embed yourself, depending on the type of participant observation methodology that you choose, but you're going to be immersing yourself. You're going to have time in order to be able to gather information. And it doesn't, even if you do the non-participatory one, that can go from like being a fly on the wall to completely immersing yourself in that group. All of those take time. The passive participant observation, you're just a bystander. You may chat with them, respond to questions, but you're really not creating any interaction. In the moderate participation, there is going to be some involvement in the part of the researcher with the study group, but you're going to maintain a balance between dipping in and dipping out of that group. And in the active participation, the researcher becomes part of the study group, but and learns how to do things with them, but it doesn't really become completely part of that group. I think complete participation where the researcher really becomes a member of that group, or is perhaps a member of that group. And just, they all have pros and cons. In the complete participation, there can be a researcher bias. You may not be as objective in the presentation of your findings. So that's just a word of caution there. Focus groups are widely used. They really, focus groups are relatively new to social science research. They were mostly used in marketing research. And, it's a small group of diverse people, but that they share a common interest. The ideal size, there are different perspectives as to what would be the ideal size of a focus group. I personally feel that a group between 5 and 7 people is ideal. If you have too few, usually people, well, you can have a large conversation if you have a couple of people. But if you have a large group, there are going to be people that are not going to participate. And one of the things that you want to do in a focus group is to generate that synergy. So, the conversation is amongst them, and that's how you're learning how they think and they share their experiences, or what it is, their ideas about something. The focus group should be conducted by someone that has some familiarity, or that is a trained moderator. And your participants are going to be recruited on the basis of similar characteristics, and you always need to have a discussion guide. And it's different from in-depth interviews, because the insights that you're gathering, you're learning through the participant interaction. So there really should be little on the part of the researcher or the moderator. They shouldn't talk as much, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So when we get to the data analysis, there are several software packages out there that you can choose from. I'm just using the ones that usually pop up the most. Atlas TI, NVivo, and Nudist. I have experience with Atlas TI and NVivo. I use Atlas TI for a number of years, and it can be buggy. And I have more recently started using NVivo, and I think that it's a more user-friendly. They're constantly updating their software packages. I noticed that they are looking to do more quantitative things without the software package. But NVivo, it's one that is also available to people at Hopkins, to researchers at Hopkins. If you have a seat in, or a folder in Safe Desktop, NVivo is one of the applications that are available to you to use. Another feature of software, qualitative data analysis software, is that it allows multi-user access to data. And once you really get familiar with how to use the data, it really is it's a nice way of discussing and sharing and working through your analysis with your colleagues. So part of once you get your interview done, you have your audio. The purest qualitative data analysts will tell you that, or researchers will tell you the self-transcription is generally the recommended way to go. You become more familiar with the data. you're able to fill in unclear passages that for someone that is transcribing that may not be able to do. You're able to add to your to your data trail, to your audit trail, by inserting explanations and clarifications while you are doing the transcription. You can also obtain feedback on yourself. You can hear yourself how you're asking a question, and if you're stumbling over something, then you're able to make adjustments in future interviews. But one of the things that I can tell you is that there is not enough money anybody can pay me to do transcriptions. It is extremely time consuming. Transcription services can turn something around in a couple of days, sometimes within 24 hours. The quality that the transcription services that I'm familiar with, it's generally good. One of the things that I recommend, though, is that when you're verifying, that you verify that transcript as soon as you receive it, and that you do it against the audio, especially if you have not done the interview yourself. And the reason I say that is because it is important to listen to the participants' voices. You're able to hear the nuances in their, in the way that they express themselves. You're able to pick up on emotions and the long pauses that will tell you something that it's hard for the transcribers to capture when they are transcribing. So coding, so when we're coding data, we're really trying to find the patterns that are in the data. And this is an iterative process. This is, you don't create a cookbook and you're done. This is time consuming. I recommend that you do this with a colleague, there are at least 2 people that are coding at the same time, but also that you use your interview guide as a guide to creating that codebook. I mean, after all, you're asking about a specific question, and want to be able to describe that phenomenon. So as you go through your transcript and you're indexing or categorizing, the themes in the transcript or the codes in the transcript, just keep in mind that you will be changing this as you go along, as you gain more insights into what other participants are saying. One of the things also that I think that is very helpful in coding is that when you're coding with someone, that you literally sit down and go line by line, code by code, and you come to a consensus. And if there is any discrepancy, that you have somebody else help make that decision, settle that before you move on. You don't want to continue coding with ideas or data that you have not had a consensus. Just like any research, any like quantitative research, there are ethical issues in conducting qualitative research. You will still need an informed consent, confidentiality, and privacy. Sometimes you cannot guarantee some of these things. You cannot guarantee confidentiality, but you can do everything possible to remove any identifiers from transcripts and any of the files that you have electronically. You also want, one of the other things, if you're going into people's homes, is that you are required to you're mandated to report if you see any signs of abuse or neglect. And this is something that you have to disclose to participants before you even consent them. The other thing is that you need to have a plan if you are going to if you're dealing with sensitive issues that may cause any distress and emotional harm. In my years of doing qualitative research, I had never had that happen, but it is good to have a plan for that. You know, the other thing is, you know, incentives. They should be nominal, and most institutions, just like Hopkins, have a policy as to what is enough and what is too much. And you want the incentive to be appropriate, but you want to be careful with people that are in some vulnerable populations. Perhaps, you know, they are, you know, poverty is a big issue, and you don't want to seem like you're purchasing their corporation. So rigor in qualitative research, Lincoln and Guba, and I'm gonna get this date wrong, but it was in the 80s, that they started talking about trustworthiness in qualitative research. And Steinmetz, I really like what Steinmetz said there, is that a trustworthy study that is fair and ethical with findings that represent as closely as possible the experience of the participants. So, you know, when you have a threat to trustworthiness, then you really need to question, you know, how it is that you're, you know, what it is that you're doing all of this and how you're doing this. So taking care of, you know, making sure that you are guarding, you know, how it is that you're doing this research, it's key. So, you know, the threat to trustworthiness, I am not going to go, you know, through those. Most of you have probably already, you know, you understand what reactivity, what researchers' violent responder bias are. But I do want to go over some of the strategies that these are more, I guess, more unique to qualitative research. So prolonged engagement, you know, with prolonged engagement, you want to spend as much time in the field in order to gain the trust of the participants, so they understand that you are there because you really want to learn something. You develop that rapport, and participants are going to be honest, and well, as honest as they can be, because you have to become a member. They recognize you as someone that is truly interested in them. You know, in triangulation, is that, you know, you want to look at, you can look at a problem from two different perspectives, making sure that you come, you know, to the same picture, to the same, you know, that your findings are the same no matter where you're looking, what lens you're looking at it from. Peer debriefing and support, it's one of my favorite ones, actually. I have participated in peer debriefing groups before, and it is a great way for a qualitative researcher to hone in their skills. You will, you know, you have a group of people that will let you know if you are being biased in your questioning. Sometimes we listen to audio, sometimes we just read transcripts, and we were able to critique, and this is all with the goal of making sure that we're helping that qualitative researcher be as neutral as possible in how they ask the questions. And then member check-in, I have done this, and there are some difficulties sometimes when people don't return their transcripts to you. But this is when you send your transcript to the participant and you say, I just want to make sure that we capture what it is that you wanted to tell us. You will need to have IRB approval in order to be able to do this, and it adds additional time and cost to your study. So a negative case analysis, it's another strategy for rigor. So where you're essentially playing devil's advocate on your study. And then, you know, you're when you're auditing and you're leaving a decision trail, you know, all those things are important. So anyone that comes behind you is able to see why you made a certain decision or how you got to that point. So practice steps for doing it. Okay, so, you know, budget for incentives. You know, we can't get together in person now, but if you were going to see someone, making sure that, you're there on time. If you have a focus group, make sure you provide some kind of refreshment to make sure that that is in your budget. Have an interview guide, become familiar with your questions. Make sure that you're only asking open-ended questions. Only ask one question at a time. Make sure that you are as neutral as you can be, and then there is no judgment. As you prepare follow-up questions, most of us prepare follow-up questions and have comments in our interview guides, but sometimes people just say some poignant things and you don't have a follow-up for that. So for me, these are some of the things that I ask participants. I will say, tell me more. It's amazing how much people will disclose when you say things like that, or when you say, how so? One that is particularly useful to me is when someone doesn't seem to understand what you're asking, or they don't have any idea or how to respond to a question, is that I will say, other participants have shared, when I ask them this question, they have shared this. And that usually gets them going. It gives them an idea, how to think differently about the question. And if at all possible, make sure, if you can, pilot the interview. Be attentive, be an attentive listener. Let the participant talk. Really as the interviewer, you should be doing very little talking. This is a big one. Be prepared and comfortable with emotions. As a social worker, and I was, trained, one of the things that we instinctively want to do as people is if someone starts to get upset or crying, we want to hug them. Well, what that tells them is that I want you to stop crying. So have tissues, when we see people in person again, have tissues, or, that people can grab if they want to, but just allow them to be and to share that with you. That is incredibly powerful when you have been able to create an atmosphere for that participant to be that vulnerable. Have at least 2 recording devices with you, budget for transcription services, and have a checklist, items to take to the interview or to have at the interview. And, there are a lot of pieces that have to happen when you're doing qualitative research. You have to have the interview guide, you have to have the recording, you have your schedule time. Then you have to download that interview, that audio. You have to submit it for transcription. It has to come back. All these pieces are hard to just keep in your mind. So a checklist is really important. So here are some things to think about, during the planning stage. Like a lot of times people say, how many participants are needed? Sometimes that's difficult to, to answer. I mean, there are different, there are lots of articles that have addressed this. And I know that for most of these pilot studies, you're limited by budget and time. Recruiting is hard, it's difficult sometimes. So, you recruit participants and you start recruiting participants when you reach saturation, There are people that say that you should do at least 2 interviews for participants if possible. That way you can hear and see if people are actually consistent in what they're sharing with you. How many study sites are needed? Well, that depends on the study that you're conducting. How much time is needed to complete the study? Again, everybody has a timeline. I don't know how many studies actually end within that timeline, but those are all questions to think about. Earlier I said pilot test the interview guide. Yes, it's, when you're so close to a subject, it's hard sometimes to see where the mistakes are. Provide participants incentives. When to start your data analysis? As early as possible. I really think that after you do the first couple of interviews and you start your data analysis in order to to improve your interview guide. You don't want to wait until you have interviewed 10 people to realize that some of the questions should have been asked in a different order, or that you should have added, you should have added another question or eliminated some of them. And again, when to start data collection, when you reach saturation. And there is a reference that I have at the end that talks about saturation. It's a really interesting article. I always offer that to people when they ask me questions about that. And that is the Guest and Bounds in Johnson. And, if you're interested to learn more about any of these researchers, I have their books. I use them all the time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marcela, for a very clear and informative presentation. This is such a broad topical area. I know it's hard to boil it all down to one lecture, and certainly we could fill up a whole series of lectures on qualitative approaches. So thank you again. We have many of our scientists on the phone, on the call today, including our new third-year RCMAR scientists. And I know qualitative research methods come up a lot in terms of the different pilot projects. Many of the pilots are based on primarily qualitative methods. Some have a qualitative aspect about them, but there are, lots of questions that come up. And so we do have some time now for questions, and we've got some members of our executive committee on the call today as well. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and open up the floor for any questions or comments that you may have. So
actually, I have a couple of questions. Thank you so much, Marcela. So as I'm doing a qualitative study, and I've predominantly finished the interviews, but there are some, so we're finding some things, for example, in East Asian older adults. Often it's not just one caregiver. Typically it's a range, of course. And in this population specifically, children are often very closely involved, and really care can't be given without them because they are kind of cultural brokers and language brokers. And what I'd like to do is actually interview, recruit some children of caregivers who are very closely involved and interview them, include a few more participants like that. And so my question is, I know we're probably saturated in terms of the original group of people, but when you kind of pursue another line of maybe questioning or include a different kind of participant, how do you address this idea of saturation and know how many more you need to recruit?
That article actually talks a little bit about that. And I will, I can send it to you. I have a PDF of it. Okay. So one of the things is that what they argue is that if you're looking at a phenomenon that it's really common among the three of them, but you're looking at different perspective, right? Because now you're looking at children. The number of codes that you're going to be able to add to that are so few, but it might be very important to what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So in terms of that, I mean, what would you budget and your timing allows? They are arguing that most of the codes that you find, you'd find within the first 15 to 20 interviews. Mm-hmm. That you don't gain much more by having all these volumes of data. The value added by doing additional interviews is so small that it's really not worth it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I mean, I don't know your data necessarily, but I will start by trying to recruit 5 and see if you're really finding anything new there. Mm-hmm.
I have also come across sometimes reviewers for qualitative articles who ask about the minority perspective. So often we think about I mean, it is qualitative, but we still kind of think about frequency and how often themes are mentioned. But I've gotten reviews sometimes that ask, what are the lesser themes or the themes that are less frequently mentioned, because those are valid as well. So I wonder if that applies or is relevant in this case.
And the thing is, though, if only one person mentioned it, is it really a theme? But I'm not saying that it's not valid for that participant. I think it's important. I can send you a few articles that I have on that. I can definitely, I can send that to you this weekend. I can do that. But, creating a table, your code book will help you a lot with that, creating separate code books for the different people that you have. And what I usually do is I do an Excel spreadsheet for the code book, and I have different pages for that. I have the different types of participants separated that way, and then see where the overlap is.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any some other questions?
Marcela, this is Roland. Thank you for a great presentation. I just have a request. Could you send those articles to all of us so we can put them in the repository, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank
Okay.
Marcela, it's Cheney. Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm not conducting qualitative interviews, but I have some open-ended questions on my survey that I'm doing. I just wanted to get your take on sort of the software that you spoke to. So like, I've never used Atlas, but I've used NVivo. It's been years since I've used it. So I'm just curious around if you have any experience sort of moving open-ended answers over to those type of software and sort of pulling out themes that way.
I'm actually doing a qualitative analysis now for the caregiving transition study, where participants were asked one question at the end, a qualitative question at the end. And what we did was we just abstracted those in the responses, the participant responses, along with, some demographics, abstracted them to a Word file. So because how many questions do you have, Cheney?
There's about 20 questions.
20, okay, so that's a little bit different.
Not 20 open-ended, probably maybe fewer than 5, we'll say.
Okay, but you might still want to keep them separately by participants. How many participants do you have?
I'm aiming for, well, the sample size is 1,000. It's the direct care agencies in Maryland.
Okay, so that's a lot of participants. I mean, I will still try to keep them separately by participants. So you will be creating 1,000 small transcripts that you're going to be uploading to NVivo. And I like NVivo better than I like Atlas-TI, to tell you the truth. I think it's user friendly. You can, if you, at the point that you're doing more things like that, there are some tricks that I've recently learned that have made things a lot simpler and easier to even just visually to look at that. So feel free to reach out, and we can do that. But yeah, you can abstract that data from your survey into a Word document. But then you will have to do it individually for each one of them. I mean, if it was just 1 or 2 questions, that's different. I mean, I don't know of any other way to keep those things separately by participant. Did you see what I'm saying? I mean.
Yep, no, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Marcela? We still have maybe 5 minutes. Marcela, I had a question about this process of member checking, where you go and have participants review their own transcripts.
Yes.
I found quite interesting. I mean, what do you do there to prevent people from just completely revamping what they've told you, maybe to sort of look good or, sort of I don't know, just changing it in a way that may not be, as sort of faithful to what they had originally presented to you? Is there any sort of check on that, or how open-ended the process is that?
Well, you do keep a copy of the transcript, right? So you're not giving everything to them.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully, my experience with that, in a study that I did when I was at Catholic U that I participated in, the people that returned the transcripts were more saying, "Oh, I didn't realize I said that. I meant this."
Mm-hmm.
They were more clarifying their responses. We didn't see anyone that was changing their responses to make themselves look in a better light.
Okay. Yeah.
It comes to a matter of trust, which is inherent in qualitative and conducting qualitative research. The people are telling you how they feel at that moment. You're only capturing their perspective, their feelings in that moment. It may change a week from now, 10 days from now.
Right.
But just giving them that opportunity to do that, you're changing the power balance there. You're giving a lot of power to that participant, and in doing so, they're going to be sharing a lot more with you. You're creating that. What's the word I'm thinking? It's not comfort, but sorry, I just can't think of the word. Trusting. They're going to be trusting you more, that you're really trying to understand and get some answers. In the case that we were doing, to get some answers to the problems that we're having, and it's going to inform more what you're going to present. When you present your results.
Great. Okay. Well, we're just about at the end here. Any final thoughts or comments that anyone wants to make? Roland,
Carrie, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, I had a quick question, Marcela. Was if any guidance in terms of thinking about who to pick as a coder, besides just who's available and willing, if there's anything they can think about?
The reality is usually who's available and willing. I don't think that it's necessary that it has to be someone that is so versed in the subject matter. I think that, you want someone that that is creative. I really think that creativity is a big part of qualitative research. You have to be able to think outside the box and to, think about people's responses creatively also, in a way. How do you link things together? How do you make those connections? Having said that, you can teach someone how to do that. People can learn to do that. I mean, qualitative researchers are not born, they are made, and some people come with more skills than others, but, we all learn how to do things.
Okay, well, thank you again, Marcela. It was a really nice presentation, and we're really delighted to have you as part of the AD-RCMAR Center. And I wanted to thank all of you for attending today, particularly our RCMAR scientists, and I want to especially welcome Carrie and Blinka and Cheney as new RCMAR scientists, as well as our returning scientists. And and also the executive board members who attended today. Want to thank them. Just in terms of preview of upcoming events, next month, November 13th, Friday the 13th, we are going to have our meet and greet for the scientists, and you all get a chance to interact as a group and present a little bit about yourself and about your work, and we're certainly looking forward to that. And then on December 11th, again a Friday, we are going to have a presentation on grant writing and rewriting, as the case may be, and also biosketch preparation and how to put together a good NIH biosketch. And Marilyn Albert, who co-leads our research education component, will be presenting on those topics on December 11th. And then we'll have lots more coming up in 2021, so stay tuned for that. So thank you again, everyone. We'll make this recording available, post it on our website, and hopefully, we will be able to see you back here next month. So take good care and stay safe and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.